Cool. Can everyone hear me okay? Perfect, cool. So, you've just graduated, or you're about to, and what do you do now? Obviously, you've been involved with student hackathons, hopefully some of you for several years, maybe just your last year. Maybe it's all you've ever done, and now you're like, what do I do in the rest of the world? Obviously, you've now heard a little bit from Melinda about things she's learned and some of the things that happen outside the student hackathon scene. And I'm here to tell you a little bit more about how you can stay engaged with the scene you've been a part of, and also what else you can find. And after Cristiano is also going to expand on that as well. So the first thing I want to tell you about the fact that you're about to graduate is don't panic. It's okay. There is other things to do. The student hackathon scene isn't the be-all and end-all of the world. Quite often, especially on some of the larger hackathon, the student hackathon community groups, there is a question of, where do I find the hackathons that aren't on MLH? And actually, it's quite an easy thing to do. But before we get there, I want to tell you a little bit of a story about something that happened to me and when I had this life crisis. So a little while ago, I went to the annual Tech Mixer, which is an event run by a couple of London societies. It's a great event. They all get together and it's really, really fun. And I know quite a few people from these societies, so I thought I'd come along and hang out for the evening. And I turned up, met everyone, and then met Daniel, who I've known for quite a while. I like to think I have a good relationship with Daniel. I like to think that we're friends, maybe. And the first thing Daniel says to me is, Joe, when are you going to stop coming to student events? And at this point, I was just like, oh God, like, this is it. Like, I'm old now. This has happened. Like, and what do you do at this point? Do I take up knitting? Do I take up knitting? Do I get some cats? Like, is it over? My life is over. But it's okay. Like, just remember, don't panic. I had been graduated for several years, and this threw me back a little bit, and I was like, is it now the time when I'm just a little bit creepy? Do I have to stop talking to you all and go off into some mountains and make some friends who have goats? Like, but no, there's a couple of things you can do to stay involved. So let's talk about that first of all. So you're being involved with student hackathons, and you're about to graduate, or you have graduated. The most important thing to remember, first of all, is you actually have 1 year left to still compete in the hackathons, let alone organising them. If you want to keep attending, MLH enables students to keep attending and winning prizes at hackathons for 1 year after you've graduated. So you can still be involved with that scene, and that's not weird. No one thinks that's odd. That's okay. But the most important thing, again, Melinda spoke about this a little bit, is you all have an immense amount of knowledge, and the fact you're all here shows that you have that knowledge. Like, you've got the ability to share this with other people. Like, sharing doesn't hurt, and you can continue to do that. Some prime examples of this are mentoring. You can go to events with the knowledge you're starting to learn from industry. You may have graduated and gone and gotten a job in a cool place, and then that's instantly new knowledge that you can go and share with the students. And a great example is Maria, who literally graduated this summer and came here yesterday and gave a talk about what she's learned from the past couple of years of doing this. I expect to see every one of you who's graduating this year and has been organising a hackathon submitting a talk to Hackcon EU next year and continuing to spread the knowledge that you've developed over the following years. One of the things that students are really bad at doing is sharing the knowledge between the years. Like, one of the great things about student communities is that every year there are more of you, and it's like, oh, it starts all over again, and it's all really exciting, and it's like this passion keeps going. But on the other hand, that's every year some knowledge that you might not have realized is really important to share leaves the ecosystem. And we need to make sure that we feed that back in, make sure you keep involved with your previous committees, and make sure that you keep involved with the various Facebook groups where knowledge is exchanged, or wherever knowledge is exchanged in a couple of years' time. And then also importantly, you can still volunteer for events. Events constantly need more volunteers. It might not be appropriate for you to be a lead organizer on your university's event, but you can still turn up and carry water bottles around, right? That's still okay. And there's a place for you to do this. Last year at Hackcon, I think it was announced at Hackcon EU last year. Bill, was that right? Yep, cool. Bill started the EU Hackathon Volunteer Exchange. There's only 82 people in this. Why? Why, people? Come and join this group. It's a great group. If hackathon organisers need volunteers, you can post in here and lots of people will join. As people who are willing to volunteer, you can post in here and find events that need you. Kevin is a great example of someone who needs to stop volunteering for hackathons. As Sammy spoke yesterday, be careful about burnout. Don't go to too many. But Kevin's a great example of someone. Okay, he hasn't graduated. He's about to start. But it's a great example of someone who is outside of the main ecosystem that you're all a part of, and is still becoming an active part in that community through their contributions and through volunteering. Another really important thing about giving back to the ecosystem is it's something you've all benefited massively from. You're all students who are part of this ecosystem and are gaining skills and gaining knowledge, as Melinda's just covered. There's a lot of fantastic things that you're gaining from it. And it's really important that when you go off into the big wide world and you become a business cat and you now have like all this like money in briefcases to throw around, that you come back and make it rain on the student societies that gave you those skills to get that job. There are so many people in this community who are where they are today, myself included, because of hackathons. And it's important that we make sure that the students 2 to 3 lines down the line after us are still able to have those opportunities. Do go and find the marketing department in your company and tell them, hey, you should sponsor this event. Do go and find the HR company and say, hey, you should give these people internships. Make sure you give back to where you came from, so that we can keep this going and that more people with the skills that you have can continue to foster those skills. This is like the single most important thing I think as a community here today we can do, is that make sure that 5 years down the line there aren't events that are saying we have to cancel, we don't have the money. There is always something you can do to help make sure that the resources are still there. But, okay, cool. So you've decided, I've done the whole student thing, I want to go into the wide world of adulting now. I want to do taxes and fun things. So the great news is that there is still there is so many events and community activity outside of being a student. The student community may just seem to be like all-consuming and huge and massive, and that's where all the hackathons are. But hackathons are still a thing outside of university, as we've seen from quite a few people this weekend, from Hacked.io, from Andrew yesterday with Hack24. Not only are they a thing, but there's so many different kinds of events that just don't exist currently in the student community, which is something we can all learn from and has been spoken about a couple of times. But there's some awesome things going on around specific aims, particularly into the civil events. There's government hackathons, there's Hackcess aiming at disabilities, there's an upcoming hackathon series about conservation issues that's being held by all the local zoos. Like, you can go to a zoo and hack, that's awesome. There's fish hackathon, the list is endless. And these are really interesting for a couple of reasons. Firstly, as students, we bring a wide range of people together from different backgrounds, but it's not quite as wide as when you go to a non-student one. There are developers there. There are people who have never picked up a computer in their life there. There are people who've been doing business for 40 years. There are people who knit for a living. Like, the range of activities and things you can learn from everyone is very, very large. And then a lot of these, because they have the aims, you're producing something which is of tangible value immediately, which is still something you can learn from, and that might not necessarily be something that drives you, but it drives someone else in the room, and that's passion that you can gather from and continue to accelerate with. So I won't go too hard on this, because I know Christian's going to talk about this a little bit next. But the community is larger than just hackathons. This is something that a lot of people in this room, we are obviously, as student societies, you do other events, and it's something that as a hackathon community we're starting to do. We're starting to see more workshops, we're starting to see chillathons. Someone's holding a Hebdocon, I think that's Goldsmiths, which is an absolutely nuts event where you build robots out of things that shouldn't make robots and then you fight them. It's great. But I wanted to do a little experiment. I looked up the technical meetups just in Eindhoven. Quite a few, more than anyone could reasonably go to on a monthly basis. So there are still loads of communities you can engage in once you disengage from the student community. You're never going to be short of things to do. Does anyone attend a regular meetup or community outside of university? Cool. So that's probably slightly more than half the room. For the rest of you, I don't know if that's just because you don't have time or because you've never looked, but I highly recommend having a go at it. So, the final section is real life. So, real life is a thing that happens to you after university, and basically it brings crippling misery and mostly lack of sleep. So in real life, you're trying to optimize for one thing. You're trying to get through your 9-to-5 job, get through your responsibilities, get through feeding your cat, get through paying your bills, and you're mostly optimizing for taking more naps. They're really important, and one of the things that you realize when you stop being a student is that, like, work-life balance is actually quite important. And we've spoken a lot as a community about burnout and about, okay, there's all these things I want to do and I need to go do them now because, like, now's the chance. Like, I need to do them before I graduate because then I have a job and, oh God, it's really stressful. But, like, once you graduate, there's an odd thing about being in university where it kind of feels, I don't know, again, Sai will be talking about the emotions of developers slightly later on. But whilst you're in university, it kind of feels like you're in, like, a holding pen going between, like, one point of your life to the other. It's like, this is the point in your life where you need to make everything happen because then after that, that's going to be a result of that, right? And that can be very stressful while you're at university, but then I can guarantee you that after university, like, work-life balance, like, is actually a thing. that feeling does go away, and you do start to realize that actually I am now just living a life, and I can do the things I want to do when I want to do them, and I have like 60 years to do this, and that's okay to take a weekend off. Those things will still be there in a weekend in the year from now, and I can just go away for a year and decide to stop engaging and go take naps for a year. That's perfectly fine. Like, I promise you, the world will not fall apart, and you won't come back in 6 months' time from having a bit of a break and find that the tech community has disappeared. It's okay to take a break. And the reason we all feel like this is a fear of missing out. And FOMO is the enemy. Never feel like by missing an event, you're letting anyone down. By missing an event, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. There's always more opportunities, there are always more events. And yes, if you've got the passion and drive to be a Scot and a panda, do go to 14 events in a season. But on the other hand, if you need a nap, that is okay too. And I highly encourage everyone to make sure they take breaks, because missing an event is actually okay. One thing I was going to say at this point is it's also okay to say goodbye to Slack and say goodbye to the communities you've been working in. Like, a lot of people, especially community leaders or society leaders, when they graduate, they become very worried about what will happen to their society once they leave. And I've seen quite a few student leaders who lurk in like the admin group of their society for like a year, being like, is everyone okay? Have you elected people? It's pointing at Sammy over here. I think you've got some issues to deal with, Sammy. It's okay to say goodbye to Slack and to log off. At the same time, like, do make sure that you do leave a solid legacy. I actually spoke about this last year. That you have made sure that you give people the time to step into your shoes, that you start to bring people on early. If you bring people on earlier in the academic year, it then means that when it's time for you to move on and real life to hit you in the face, you can say goodbye to Slack and you can move on cleanly, and nothing will burst into flames. And the single most important thing I want to say about graduating is that we all eventually leave university. Well, some of us do. Some of us do PhDs and stupid things and try and stay around forever. But in theory, we all leave university. So you're not alone in doing this. Everyone in this room will at some point leave, and we stay friends after we graduate. That is a thing that happens. So you don't have to worry about suddenly being away from a community. There's new communities you can join, but this existing community will continue, and we will continue to host events together. We will continue to do other stuff. And if that's not something that interests you, you can join me in being a weirdo at all the student events, and we can say a big fuck you to Daniel. Thank you very much. I've been Joe Nash. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Joe. Up next, we have our next lightning talk from Cristiano.